Hey guys, it is Campbell here. Today I'm going to be continuing what we started yesterday. So this video is going to be about making our drivetrain turn rather than moving forward or backward. This video will involve the making of a turning function that hopefully you'll be able to utilize during your autonomous period, but we're going to take it up just a notch to make it a little bit more complicated than yesterday's. Hopefully you'll be able to apply some of this in your further programming or other functions that you make later on down the line. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing, I make this recommendation to all of the students that I work with, all of the coaches. I tell them, if your teams, if you want to have a competitive autonomous, if you want to make a competitive robot, you have to use sensors. It's what I was taught, and it was, one of the most useful pieces of information I was ever given. So for this turning function, we are going to be utilizing this inertial sensor right here. So we're going to go ahead and add that to our code. And like I said, we're going to start with making a function. So because we're going to, I'm going to make it sort of easier for maybe people who are starting out, beginners, we're going to be making two separate turning functions, all right? So we're going to make this first one turn right, but this time we're going to add two inputs. So that first input is going to be degrees, which is the heading that we want to turn to. And the second input is going to be velocity, and that is going to be what we want to set our motor velocity to. Alright, so because we're going to be utilizing a sensor, one of the first things we want to do is set that rotation to be 0 degrees, because if you're going to be reusing this function a lot, if you want to turn, let's say you make 3 turns in your autonomous, it is a lot easier to set it to 0 and just say, from the position I'm now in, I need to turn 30 degrees to the right or 20 degrees to the left. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to figure out what degree you're turning to from your original position, if that makes sense. And the reason that we're going to be using rotation rather than heading, I'm going to be referring to it as the heading throughout this video, but the reason that we're using rotation right here instead of heading is because rotation, when we make our turn left function, is going to, that's what's going to allow us to turn left, basically. Heading starts at 0, wherever you're facing when you calibrate it, and it goes clockwise to 360 degrees and then restarts at 0. Rotation allows you to go clockwise or counterclockwise, and when you go counterclockwise, the rotation is clocked as negative, and you can go even further than 360 degrees if you needed to. So we're going to be using rotation. Next thing we're going to do is grab this set our motor velocity. So let's go ahead and make a couple of those. And now all we do is just grab this velocity input from up here and drag and drop it into where we want to set our velocity. And so again, this will allow you to control the velocity. If you're making a long turn, you're turning 180 degrees, you can set your speed to be a little bit faster, or if you're just turning a couple of degrees, you can set it to be slower. Now, we're going to go ahead and conceptualize this for a second. What we want to do is be able to turn our robot to the right as long as our inertial sensor is not at the heading that we want it to be, right? So in a couple of videos in the past when I've talked about making proportional controllers or things like that, what we call that difference is error. So I want to be facing the heading 45 degrees, and right now we've set our inertial to be 0 degrees. So our error is 45 degrees. As long as our inertial sensor is not reading 45, we want our motors to be spinning. So we're going to grab a while, and we're going to make a loop. Here we go. And once again, it's while our inertial sensor is not equal to whatever our heading is. And so let's grab that rotation. So while our inertial is not equal to the input degree that we want, and now we can just go ahead and finish this up. What we want to do is spin our motors, and we'll go ahead and pop them in there, right? And so there we have our first function, right? We set our sensor to 0 while it is not equal to the heading that we want it to face. Our left motors will spin forward and our right motors will spin reverse. and that will allow us to turn our robot to the right. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is make the turn left function, which is going to be super similar, but the only thing is, obviously, we want these motors to spin the opposite direction, right? So we're going to go ahead and make a block, and we'll call it turn left with our two inputs, degrees and velocity. And it's going to be just about the same, where we want to reset our rotation to 0. We want to set our motor velocity and we're going to make it while our inertial sensor is not equal to this heading that we want it to be. The only difference this time is that our left motors are going to be spinning in reverse, obviously, because we want to turn left instead of right, and so our right motors are going to be spinning forward. Now there's one thing that you want to make sure when you are using this turn left function. You want to make sure that your input degrees are negative, because once again, when the inertial sensor turns to the left, it's going to pick up a negative rotation, a negative heading. Because as you're turning to the left, you are turning counterclockwise, and the inertial sensor picks up a negative rotation when you turn counterclockwise. So you just want to make sure that you're using the right turning function, and you want to make sure that when you are turning left, you're putting in negative degrees, just so that your robot doesn't get confused and try and turn all the way back around to positive 60 degrees when you really need it to go negative 60 degrees. And so now we'll be able to utilize both of these functions. We'll head down to My Blocks, and we can just grab turn left and turn right, and we can turn left, negative 40 degrees at 50% velocity, and we can turn right 40 degrees at positive 75% velocity. And there you have it. So I hope that this has been useful. I hope you guys can, utilize this. In future videos, we're going to go more in depth how to make these functions a little bit more complicated, how to combine them all into one function that you can turn in either direction, and of course how to make a variable speed like we've done in the past with C++ with our proportional and derivative controllers. So, but yeah, this is just a very basic beginner, one of the first functions kind of that you are going to be introduced to in your robotics careers. So I hope this has been useful. Let me know what else you guys want to see, and yeah, if you are going to use this, if you did find it useful, please leave a like and consider subscribing. It would greatly help us out in reaching a wider audience. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you next time.